angels weeping for her children. Angels weeping. Somehow someone's got to save them. Save the children. And if you say that love the answer, why don't we begin? Or will we just end?
Hi, this is Miss Evelyn. Welcome to Visions for a Child's Heart. Today, our guest is a young man that I've known for quite some time now. And with the release and signing of my new book, It's Hard Work, Being the Village That Raises a Child, this is one of the young people that's featured in the book. And he is actually here in Vallejo with me this weekend to celebrate the release and opening. I want to welcome you and introduce you to Mr. Eric Bazile. Welcome, Eric.
Hello, Mom.
Son, it's good to have you here.
It's nice to be here.
Great, great. When we talked about doing this, you were saying, well, what are you going to say to me? What are you going to ask me? And I said, we're just going to talk like we've been talking for the past 24 hours nonstop.
Right.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've really had some one-on-one time together. And I think you were excited about the book and hearing what I had to say about you during your younger years.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it's ironic that the name of the book is It's Hard Work, Being the Village. And actually the name of the program where I first met you was called
Village.
Village High School. Yeah. So when I met you, you were how old?
16 years old.
16.
About to turn 17.
Yeah, actually just a month before your birthday. Yeah, I remember that. And you are how old now?
36.
36. Somebody getting old. It's just amazing to me that that much time really has gone by. It just seems like it's just like that fast. But I'm just really proud of just everything that you've overcome to get to this point. And before we started the cameras, we were talking about some of the choices that you've made that you had not told me before.
Right.
Some things that you were not too proud of, but then at the same time having to overcome some of those bad choices. But the reason that I chose to feature you in the book because, of course, you know, the Visions, we talk a lot about children separated from their biological parents, and you were a child who had been separated from your mom and dad at a young age. But fortunately, you didn't actually go through the foster care system.
No, I didn't go through the foster care system, but I was placed in a foster home for a short period of time due to some unforeseen circumstances. So I've tasted how it feels to be in that system and not belong to anybody, and it's very hard because you struggle with trying to fit in. You know, where do I fit in? You got to go to a new school, or it's something. It's something that there's many different areas that you deal with.
Right. Now, how old were you, and how long do you recall being? Because you were young. How long do you recall being in an actual foster home?
I would say somewhere maybe about. It felt like forever, but I would say maybe 3 to 6 months.
Okay. And I think that's important because we said, well, only 6 months, but for a child that does seem forever. And you also have a brother that was in the home with you. What's the age difference between you?
Me and John are actually 3 years apart.
3 years
so
apart. And
John's 33 and I'm 36.
And at that time, you were?
At that time, I had to be about around 9 years old. So John was roughly 6.
About 6. Okay. Okay. So tell me what you remember about your life before you were separated from your biological parents.
Life was up and down, moved constantly, always had to deal with changes, and I found it hard because where I started out in Vallejo, moved to Montana with my mother and my little brother, and because of, unfortunately, my father was abusive to my mother. So we moved to Montana, and so that was a new environment. You know, Vallejo and Montana
Big
are
difference.
big difference.
And then there was also the racial issue there, because your mother.
My mother's white, my father's black, so being mixed didn't make it easy, especially growing up in the 70s, early 70s. You still had racial issues.
And
So-
we still do, but
Right.
yeah, that was.
But
more pronounced.
what happened with me is I paid the price for what my brother did, because he was so small, and the things he would do, everything from stealing the neighbor's bike, you know, to, you know, saying something to, you know, one of the little kids, they didn't bother with him because he was too small. They came back on me, and so I was the one always getting into fights or trying to go ahead and hold things down. And so that made it really hard for me. And being that my mother was acting as a single parent, there was nobody, she wasn't around, so she would go to work. And me and my brother did have a babysitter, but at the same time, she wasn't always there. She wasn't always watching us closely. So we would get into things, so that caused a lot of issues.
So did you find that a lot of your issues were with other children or with the adults in the neighborhoods, or both?
With both, because up in certain parts of Montana, you don't have that diverse culture where you have, you know, African American and Hispanics and Asians and different things. And so what ends up happening is you end up trying to fit in, and you don't know where to begin.
So that was difficult for you as a child. That was probably even before you started school, right?
Yes, that was actually that was right before I started kindergarten, and like I said, it just continued on until I was 7, and then that's when I moved back to California to go ahead and stay with my father.
Okay, so what happened at age 7 that caused you to come to California?
My mother basically asked me and my brother, did you guys, you know, now that you guys are getting older, you need somebody to teach you how to be a man. You know, and that is the, you know, we hear it in movies or we see, you know, saying, I can't teach you how to be a man, you know. And so she sent me, and as well as my brother, to California, actually Oakland, California, and we stayed on the east side, and that was a culture shock, because going from
an all-white environment,
right, all white as well as Native American environment, to a multicultural environment, it's like, okay, now where do I begin now?
Because you even had, you know, you had options like, okay, well, where do I fit in?
Right.
It's still not filling. So you stayed with your father and his then wife?
Right.
Okay.
And who actually went ahead and accepted me and my brother. She seemed like she accepted us, but it's hard to go ahead and just jump into somebody's life and you don't know them. I didn't know my father. He was around when I was young, but I believe after I was, say, 2 or 3 years old,
that's when you guys
and once we
back.
moved, he was no longer in my life. So here I'm getting to know somebody that I don't even really know. You know, I can't remember.
Right.
And not only trying to know him, but to know his new wife, and then on top of that, they had a child, so which is my sister, which was now, so that's getting to know 3 different people, you know, and
trying to find your place.
Right, and my brother being 4th, that was even harder for him.
Wow. Okay. So, and it was from there that you actually went into foster care.
Right.
What happened there?
Because they had issues.
Okay.
And their issues led to my stepmother actually taking us away from my father, and he didn't know.
Oh.
We thought we were on a vacation.
Was it fun?
It was fun
Okay.
until the police come knocking on the door and takes us all away.
Mm.
We don't know what's going on because you're so young. You don't know what's going on.
Did you think you had done something wrong when the police came?
She did, not me. I either felt one or two things. Either she did something wrong, or my father had done something wrong,
Okay.
and they were coming to let her know.
Okay.
Because at that time, my father had been involved in a variety of things. So, and I was never clear on, where he worked or what he did for a living. So, all I knew is that I would hear, that he would gamble or he would, be here or be there, but I never really knew. Like I said, those were issues that you never
We're told as a child.
Well, as a youngster, I'm not going to ask my father, hey, where do you work? What do you do? I was just getting to know him.
Okay.
So those weren't questions
That were even important to you
Right.
at that time. Okay. So the police came and took you, placed you in a foster home,
Right.
and you were there for probably about 6 months.
Long enough to go to school.
Okay. Wow. And you were, I guess, probably about 2nd grade at that time?
At 9, you're in what?
Okay, about 4th grade.
Right.
Okay. And you were there how long with your dad?
We actually went through 2 foster homes.
Mm.
And the first one actually was, it was a shocker because I was young, but my brother was especially young.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I remember we had, the lady that was there taking care of us treated us like slaves. And in the end, she ended up making my brother do something. And what happened is the social worker, I guess, came by, found out what happened, and she actually got closed down.
Wow.
So we ended up getting moved to another foster home. So it was just, like I said, it was rough because, one minute you're here, next minute you're here. So I felt like I said, I felt like, where do I belong?
So that just added to what you already had experienced.
Right.
So the second foster home, what was that like? Was it better or worse or the same?
It was better. The lady, I remember being more of a southern woman, very hospitable, very kind, and she took really good care of us. So that wasn't as bad, but it was always the question of when are my parents coming to pick me up? I don't belong here.
Right.
And that is the big issue is, you're like, I don't belong here, something's wrong. So that's what's going through your mind every day constantly.
Yes. When am I going to get back to home?
Right.
I'm just curious, what was the ethnicity of both of those foster parents?
Both of them were African American.
Okay. So, eventually you left foster care and went?
And actually went back into the same situation because my father was awarded custody of us because, of course, his wife was not our biological mother, so she had no ties to us. So we went back to being with my father, but...
Had they separated at that point?
They had separated maybe for 2 days and went right back to being together, and what ended up happening there real shortly after, maybe I would say 2-3 weeks at the most, that's when my father made a choice that he wanted to work on his marriage, and she had went ahead and expressed, I think, concerns that it would be too hard with your sons who are already 9 years old, 9 and 6, to be in our mix, basically. At least that's the feeling that I had, because what I couldn't understand is, why did my sister get a stay, but yet I don't get a stay?
So someone was chosen over you, and again, you're
Right.
shipped off. And he shipped you off to,
To my Aunt OT.
okay.
And the funny thing with Aunt OT is she was definitely a blessing because number one, my Aunt OT is actually my aunt by marriage,
Okay.
not by blood.
Mhm.
So that was definitely a blessing. And I didn't know my Aunt OT. When we went to go stay with my Aunt OT, I didn't know her that well. I had heard of her, but I didn't know her that well. But the funny part is, my Aunt OT was there when I was born. She took care of me when I was younger because she helped my mother when there was no food in the house or when my father had stayed out and my mother couldn't get contact with my father. So my Aunt OT was always there, always in contact, and she actually was the one that helped my mother move up to Montana.
To get out of the abusive relationship.
Right.
Okay. Wow.
So that was really something different.
So
It
she
was-
knew you, but you didn't know
Know
her.
her,
But she
right.
was there. It's like that song says about God, Jesus, and she was there all the time. Wow. So so you were about 9 then.
About 9,
Okay.
eight or 9.
Okay, and that's where you remained until you became an adult. That's who you were living with when I met you.
Right.
So when I met you, 8OT hadn't given up on you, but she was frustrated.
Right.
And you were doing some...
I was always called the class clown, class comedian. And excuse me. And I would always go ahead and joke. Everybody would laugh at my jokes. But I was in Vallejo High, at Vallejo High School. Teacher told me, you made one more joke, you're going to go see your counselor. And I was like, what's going to happen to me? I'll go ahead and get in trouble, maybe suspended. No big deal. And I made one last joke and interrupted her class. She said, okay. She gave me a referral. I walked down to see my counselor. My counselor said, you know what? We've told you and told you, and now there's nothing I can do for you. So I'm thinking, like, what do you mean nothing you can do for me? You know, you know what I'm saying? What's going to happen? He said, we're going to have to expel you.
Oh.
And that just didn't set with me at all because I knew what was going to happen once I got home.
Oh, that sort of reminds me of a story that Les Brown tells about getting arrested when they found out who was his mother.
Right.
And they said, oh, we're just going to take you home. He said, no, no, please take me to jail. Take me to jail. So, now, how were your grades in school?
When I first went ahead and moved with my Aunt OT, my grades were good. My grades were, I would say, of an average student. You know, B's, C's, an A here or there. But the problem is where I lived in College Park, and College Park was kind of a little rough area at that time, and so, you know, I tried to fit in there and mix with, you know, I mixed with people that were good people, but we all came from broken homes. So
you all had some what we call acting out behaviors.
right.
But the reason I was asking you about your grades, because it's just strange to me that they would expel you just on being a class clown. So if your grades were decent, you weren't violent.
No, my grades had went ahead and declined as time went on. When I moved to Mount OT, everything was okay. My grades weren't too bad. But as I progressed, went to Solano Junior High School. As soon as I got into junior high, that's when everything started going down. That's when I became more of a class clown, and that's when it rolled over into high school. And that's why I ended up getting expelled, because my grades did decline to where I was getting D's and an occasional F, because I just didn't want to put the effort into school. It just was.
Looking back, and at the time you might not have been able to consciously say, but looking back, why do you think you just insisted on clowning and cracking jokes and just being rebellious, defiant?
It's about fitting in. For me, it was about
Really?
fitting in because I didn't have the shoes, I didn't have the clothes that the other kids had, so I had to find a way to fit in. I had to find a way to be accepted by the kids. Back then, you either got picked on or you was with the, you know,
Once
you
you
was
did the
either
picking on.
right. So I would rather be with the people who done the picking on versus getting picked on. So
Actually, it's funny because one of my memories, one of the things that irked me the most about you is what you guys call capping. It's like, Eric, will you be quiet? Okay. Something like that, and everybody busted out. That, I think that to me, that was the behavior that got me just most upset, and I mentioned that
Right.
in the book. And I think I was probably aware that that was some of it, but I think there was a part of it that was just so annoying. I was like, even as a counselor, it's like it just went over my head because
Right.
it just went right through me. So that is what brought you into my world, or brought
Right.
us into each other's worlds. You were expelled from Vallejo Senior, sent over to Village High, which was basically an adolescent day treatment school,
Right.
basically where you would get the professional counseling along with your academics,
Right.
and could have worked up your credits to go back into the regular high school.
Right. And I eventually did work up to go back into Vallejo High, but by then I was so far, I would say, in left field. In other words, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go ahead. I wanted to do my own thing, and so that eventually didn't work out either.
Okay.
So.
Okay. So we've spent a lot of time talking about the show, and actually some of it is ringing bells for me because some I'd forgotten, some I didn't know,
Right.
and we've almost really run out of time. So we really need to do a continuation of this. But at that time, when you came to Village, what was it? Did you ever feel like you belonged at any point when you got there, and how long did it take?
Before I even went to Village, they gave me two options. They gave me People's High School, and they gave me Village. People's there was no structured counseling that I knew of. In other words, you wouldn't get help.
Mm-hmm.
It was just you were thrown into the wolves, and if you survive, you survive.
Mm-hmm.
With Village, it was put off to me as being a mental, like a little mini mental institution, you know, and so I wasn't too thrilled about it. But in the end, I actually ended up receiving what I actually needed.
Okay.
And so that was a big help because it wasn't the little mental institution they said. It was just they've taken some kids that had problems just like anybody else, and what they did is they put them in a structured environment so they could actually go ahead and get help so they don't end up like a lot of people who, you know, end up
Right.
falling by the wayside.
We're going to close, and we'll talk a little bit more about your experience from Village throughout to where you are now in our relationship. But what would you say to young people and even adults about getting counseling to deal with the behaviors? Because when you say mental institution, people think if you're getting counseling, it means that you've got mental problems, that you're crazy.
Right.
And I don't think that was mental problems. You had emotional problems.
Right.
What would you say that you got out of having a counseling type environment that you think other young people could benefit from?
I think that, number one, as a parent, you should not go ahead and make your child feel like they are an issue, like they have a mental problem. You should actually address the issue, and you should go ahead and support your child, because with your support, then what will happen is your child will grow up to know that their parent cares, and that is the biggest thing, is knowing that somebody is there that actually cares, because there's a lot of kids now that are falling by the wayside. I didn't fall by the wayside because I had my mother, who I consider Evelyn to be my godmother, and being that she was there for me.
And your auntie.
And my aunt T, definitely. being that they both were there for me, that actually helped me tremendously.
Well, what would you say to the kids when a parent wants to get them a counselor? They say, I don't need counseling, like you said. What would you say as we got like 1.5 minutes left?
I would say don't be closed-minded. You have to be open-minded. And the thing about it is, look at it like this. This is somebody, a counselor is somebody that doesn't even know you. Go ahead and let them know what's going on, because your life could be so much better.
Okay. Thank you. And realizing that sometimes it may not be a match, but you have to be open-minded, keep trying. I think it just so happened that, you know, we were a good match, and there were other counselors in the milieu that were working together. So I'm in a total agreement with you that the parents need to be open and saying, I need some help. It doesn't mean that you're a failure. And for the young people, know that if someone is trying to get you into counseling, they're not saying you're crazy. They're just saying that they want you to offer you something that they're not able to offer themselves. So we're going to close out this segment, and we're going to have you to join us hopefully next week or the next hour as we continue our conversation with Mr. Eric Bazile. And I'm glad you're here. Thank you. Love you.
Love you too, Ma.
Say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Someone's got to save the children. Rachel's weeping for her children. Rachel's weeping. She's weeping for her children. Mother's weeping, a mother's crying, dying, crying for her children, for her children. A mother's weeping, for her children. Children, a mother's